Amsterdam Kitchen. Join us live on Saturday mornings
from 10 till 12
on Broadcast Amsterdam.
Or catch up later.
It's all online.
Oh yeah, welcome to the Amsterdam Kitchen on Saturday, the 21st of September. My name's Kathy Central.
And I'm Gilly Carney. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, when I say my name's Kathy Central, that's not actually my given born name. It's my Twitter handle and all, all those other things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Whereas I'm just giving it all away. Oh.
So welcome. This is Amsterdam Kitchen. What are we all about?
Lots of local foodie news and reviews. Sorry, Kathy, I used the word foodie. I beg your pardon.
I don't like the word foodie.
It's a bit early still.
Yeah.
Yes, we've got a special guest today, Alex Kitain of the Coffee Vine. Looking forward to meeting him. I'm, as you know, a bit of a coffee addict myself. And we've got Winkelwagen, the return of Winkelwagen. Sorry. You've selected something for that, Kathy, haven't you?
Yes.
Shall we save that till we get there?
Yeah, it'll be a surprise. Something special for your shopping trolley, Winkelwagen. And, all sorts. So local food news, more local food stories, reviews of De Moor restaurant, which is a restaurant on the Overtoom, and De Kaas in Oost.
Yeah. That's all coming up, plus the return of Eat My Dutch, What's in a Wurtel?
Wortel.
Sorry, beg your pardon, wortel.
Can you roll yours? I just did it naturally. Oh, it's really difficult, actually.
Wortel?
Yeah, Oh, no. When you really try, you can't do it. It has to come naturally.
Yeah.
If you want to get in touch and send us suggestions, you can tweet us at BroadcastAMS. And, sooner or later, we'll be taking phone calls and all sorts.
Yes.
So the Amsterdam Kitchen is live on Saturday mornings from 10 till 12. But if you miss it, you can catch up online afterwards. As we said in the jingle. Amsterdam Kitchen. Yeah, it's 10:33 on Amsterdam Kitchen, and welcome to the studio, Alex Kitain.
Hi.
Cool. Now, Alex, you're from an organisation called the Coffee Vine.
You make it sound like it's some huge Nespresso-like business.
It is, right? Big corporate station somewhere.
Or like the Sicilian Mafia.
Oh, God. No, very far from it.
Yay. Tell us all about it. What is it?
So the Coffee Vine started out as a kind of passion project of mine. I've always really enjoyed writing, and when I was at university, I used to write a lot of newspaper articles for the student university paper. And a couple of years later, after I sort of already moved to Amsterdam, I started sort of getting into coffee, and I discovered specialty coffee as something that I didn't really know anything about. And the Coffee Vine kind of came about as kind of like my way of letting out this creativity that I have. Like I like writing and I like connecting with people. And I kind of wanted to create a place where local cafe owners and roasters could reach, other coffee lovers.
Yes.
So that's how it started. And the name, a lot of people always ask me, oh, do you do coffee and wine? It's like, no, it's actually Coffee Vine because it's a play on the sort of saying, I heard it on the grapevine.
Yeah, of course,
so, so I heard it on the Coffee Vine. Ah, yeah, cool.
Some people are just booze obsessed.
Yeah.
I can't understand. I
know
understand
that. Yeah, so, and then, the Coffee Vine kind of started growing and it started becoming more popular, and I started doing workshops and, walking tours and that sort of stuff. And then when my last employment came to an end, I decided to take the plunge and start a subscription service.
Yes.
So I still do that now. It's now been going for 6 years, which is really cool.
Fantastic.
And we work with 3 super awesome roasters that I curate every month, and we create this really nice box, and it's shipped to customers in over 40 countries. And over time, I've been able to work with, the likes of Airbnb, Hostel World, KLM. They've reached out to us. Like I've co-written a book for Lonely Planet. I've written some other, lots of articles for different magazines. And it's just been a super interesting experience because it kind of lets me do the things that I love, which is, travel, meet people, go to coffee bars.
Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. Fantastic to combine that passion with your own career, yeah.
And I mean, for me, the most interesting thing is, I don't do this to be famous or to do, or to be considered an influencer. I really don't like that term, actually. But it is quite interesting when I do walk into a cafe somewhere in a town that I've not been to, and they say, "Oh my God, are you from the Coffee Vine?" I'm like, "Oh, maybe.
Yeah, win for me.
Who's asking?" Yeah.
That's great.
It's like when a top reviewer comes into a restaurant. Yeah.
Exactly. And then sometimes they wear a wig or they put like a fake
do you
mustache
have to now
on.
start disguising yourself?
You've got quite a distinct hair quiff that people...
Right now I do, yeah.
Wow. But I mean, it all started with a blog.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and it still is a blog, you know.
Yeah.
It's still considered one of the most, well, it is the most widely read websites for personally written cafe reviews. You know, I do actually, all the cafes that I review on for the website are personally visited by me.
Yes.
I make it my mission to not negatively review anywhere because I don't think it's fair, you know, to go out and bitch about somebody, you know, when they might have had a bad day.
We all have a bad day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the cafes that I put on the website and the guides I create are really specifically telling people where to get great coffee.
But I mean, it's impressive because you say you personally visited all of these places.
Yeah.
It's a global review site, right?
Oh, yeah.
You've got cafes.
I travel a lot. Yeah.
What's the remotest place you've been to?
Remotest place? I mean, overall or on the reviews?
Well, for the reviews, yeah.
Okay, for the reviews, because I've been to some very remote places.
I'm sure. That's another story. We'll get into that.
I mean, I think the furthest away is Japan, I think. But I've also got some reviews in Iran that I went to 3 years ago, which was super interesting. Yeah, I wanted to put some cafes from Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan on there. I went there this year, but I couldn't find any good cafes.
No.
So, sorry.
Yeah,
nothing there.
But they must all bring, obviously, their own local cultural and style to a cafe, which must make it pretty fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for example, if you go to Istanbul, which has a really great coffee scene, you will find in almost every specialty coffee bar, they will have the Turkish coffee set up. And it's actually considered even, you know, a kind of, they have a competition every year who can make the best Turkish coffee. And when you try Turkish coffee with specialty coffee beans, so like single origin coffee from, you know, Ethiopia, whatever, it is such a different type of drink than if you just get the very traditional Turkish coffee.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, because people talk about first and second wave coffees and roastings and things, and so the current style is for much lighter treatment of the beans, which is very different to what was going on historically.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. I mean, it was kind of inspired by the Nordic roasters from Scandinavia who started roasting very lightly because they wanted to bring out more floral and fruity notes. And when you roast the coffee too dark, you actually create a very oily texture on the bean. And that's also very unpleasant because it leaves quite a film. Like if you use a French press, for example, there's no paper filter in there, so it leaves this oily film on top. But it also tastes bitter, and that's what people often think of. Oh, it's quite a bitter coffee. So if you roast relatively lightly and you use very modern equipment, like, for example, a Loring roaster, which is the most advanced roaster out there, you can roast so beautifully and so evenly that the coffee you just taste the best parts of the coffee and none of the nasty parts.
Yeah. No, I love it.
Wow. It's amazing. It's developing so much. But I mean, you've written about coffee for so long, and someone was talking about restaurant reviews as well and food. And when it comes to food, it's like, don't you just run out of words? And I think if you're talking about one thing like coffee as well, like how difficult is it? You know, or do you find it completely natural?
So I don't necessarily focus only on the coffee. So for me, a cafe has to have the total package, right? So, I mean, there are places that have great baristas and there are places that have maybe less talented baristas, but they have a really great concept, you know? And I try to be quite balanced in the sense that I do also consider everything else. There are people out there who are very, very strict on, you know, the kind of quality. But I think, you know, you need to give everyone a chance because coffee is like food. You know, everyone has their own style. Everyone has their own way of presenting it, making it. What I think the most important thing is in the coffee world, what is not happening so much is because it's such a speedy drink in the sense that you get takeaway, you walk into a cafe, you want your coffee to go, you leave. You don't really interact with the barista very often. To the degree that they can actually tell you something about what you're drinking. And I think that's one of the things that has to happen a bit more in cafes, especially when people sit down, is that they tell you what it is that you're drinking, where it's from, you know, who produced the coffee, what are the special characteristics and so on. So you walk away understanding more about the product.
Yeah, I was talking about Boca last week, and that's what I liked about them. You get a little... You know, it's like a business card.
Yeah, exactly.
With the details of the coffee that they're serving you. So I think that it's really important. It does bring a whole new level to the experience. Although, conversely, what I kind of find a bit odd when you go to coffee shops and you just want a coffee.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're confronted with a million questions. Well, do you want it like this? Do you want it like that? And for some people, that's a bit bewildering. And is there any help out there to kind of guide people through what are I mean, like there's the drip method and the cold press and I don't know, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming.
It is a bit overwhelming, but I think it's also, the barista should kind of direct you more and sort of like find out what it is that you like. So if you like something fruity, if you like something a bit more punchy, if you like something a bit, more balanced, then, instead of asking you all these questions, they could just say, what do you like, know? And based on that, they can make a recommendation. And if you don't, want to go with it, then you can always just say, look, just surprise me, or, what do you recommend? But I think a lot of people don't have an open mind when they go into a coffee bar. They just want, something that resembles what they're used to. And for example, Lot 61 across the road, I used to actually work there in the beginning of my coffee vine experience. And I used to get a lot of people saying, just do a coffee, give me a coffee. And I'd be like, okay, cool, but we have espresso based, we have filter. They were like, yeah, well, just give me a coffee. And that makes it difficult because then you're kind of like faced with this sort of choice of like, what do I give them? Yeah,
because you've no idea from what perspective they think a normal
right.
coffee
is. Yeah,
exactly.
If they're used to drinking Turkish coffee, then...
Exactly.
Broadcast Amsterdam.
We're back with Alex Kitain from the Coffee Vine, and he's got something new for us.
That's right. Yeah, so I mean, as an entrepreneur, you are always looking to improve your product, but I was always also interested in maybe adding something new to the Coffee Vine. And I went to Japan a few years ago with 3 friends, and I came across this super awesome product, which is basically a ready-to-brew filter that has ground coffee inside. And it comes in a little wrapper, and you can take it with you. It fits in your pocket. And I got some from a local roast in Kyoto, and the next morning I brewed it up for my friend and I in the Airbnb, and I was so surprised by how good the coffee was.
Because it sounds like an incredibly simple concept, really.
So simple. Yeah. Because you don't need anything. You just need a mug and hot water.
Exactly.
So is it like a tea bag?
Yeah.
Like,
essentially,
better coffee.
It's like a tea bag, except it has a little frame on it, so it actually sits on top of the cup. And I was so curious to find out more, so I contacted the roaster and I said, hey, where did you get this from? And he said, yeah, there's this company that makes these machines and blah, blah, blah. And long story short, there's a producer in Germany that I contacted through this manufacturer. And after some negotiation, he agreed to produce for me.
Yeah.
And I launched this new brand called Fresh Drip, which is basically a complementary product. Initially, it was meant to be a Coffee Vine branded product, but then we decided it should be its own entity. And we launched it into the market with 4 variants. Maybe went a little bit overboard with that. We didn't need 4. We just needed 1. Yeah. But, we had some early successes. We got the Hoxton on board. They put it in their rooms to really great resounding feedback. We had the Harrods as one of our first retailers, which was really exciting. You can buy it at places like Bever, the outdoor stores in the Netherlands. You can buy it at Hutspot, at the Maker Store. We have a bunch of hotels. We've supplied the Google office and, just kind of like trying to reach out to businesses that are really focused on creating something unique for their guests or for their customers.
So what's nice about this is kind of touching on what we talked about before, where, some people walk into a coffee shop and they're a bit like, I don't know. And actually, this is totally focusing on, it's a simple serve, right?
Yeah.
Like you say, you can take it everywhere. And it's just delivering a really good quality cup of coffee.
That's right.
That's simple as that.
Yeah.
Those fancy coffee machines can cost a few hundred
They can.
euros, can't they?
Yeah.
And if you could, just get a nice, simple, but very good cup of coffee with just the hot water and your kettle.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah. No,
That's the whole idea. It's basically bridging the gap between instant coffee at the very low end of the spectrum and something like, brewing coffee at home at the very high end of the spectrum. Obviously, things don't always go according to plan. And we did realize that the first version of the product that we made didn't really work. And, as an entrepreneur, like, you have to accept the fact that sometimes you have to change things and be open to change. I did a talk a few months ago for Creative Mornings, where I talked about survival. And, one of the reasons why we have survived as a business is because we changed according to what our customers were saying, and so we redesigned Fresh Drip completely. We're now working with a different range of coffees. It's more mainstream. The packaging is very different. It's very, very clear. People didn't quite get it when they saw it on the shelves. They looked at the box and thought, oh, this is cute, but they didn't really get it. They're like, is this like chocolate? So we're now telling people very clearly this is coffee and how it works. And, the feedback we've been getting from potential buyers has been really great.
But that's it, because it's not just, it sounds like fun and it's like doing the coffee and stuff, but it's a business. It's got to be successful.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've got the whole, apart from tasting coffee and all the glamorous side of it, you've got the nuts and bolts of making it economically viable, dealing with producers and stuff, and talking to businesses. How do you balance that? Do you feel that every day is different that way?
Yeah, I think so, because the conversations I'm having now are very different to the ones I was having before. Because I feel as an entrepreneur, I also feel a lot more confident about the product, because I know that we've made the changes that, people were saying, hey, the packaging isn't clear, or the coffee isn't strong enough, and all this sort of stuff. So when I go to a hotel or when I go to a retailer, I feel a lot more confident about pitching the product. So every day is very different, which is really exciting, because, I used to always be a bit afraid about, what are they going to say, and now I'm getting such great feedback from hotels, and we're launching at this beautiful hotel in Helsinki in 2 weeks. We're talking to a couple of hotels in Amsterdam, but also we're talking to duty-free stores. We're talking to distributors, we're talking to retailers and things like this. So it's a lot more exciting now, because I do feel like people are responding so much better to the product.
So there's a real momentum building up behind it. We can get it already from Harrods, you said, and but
locally also.
But locally, in the Baby, you said, that's right. Yeah, I'll have to go.
Yes, but do you feel like, although you're very much a global company and doing so much overseas with Helsinki and everything, how much do you think living and working and building your business in Amsterdam has shaped it? Because I feel like it seems like there's a really good, I don't know how to describe it, business microclimate or something that works really well, because it's a global city, but it's quite small geographically.
Yeah.
Do you find that the local businesses are really supportive then?
I would say some. I have had mixed experiences here, I have to be honest. I feel like places like the Maker Store have been incredibly supportive since day one. But also, I've had some, early successes with hotels like the Hoxton, for example. But I've also felt that a lot of companies, like large retailers, supermarket chains and so on, they're trying to portray themselves as being super open-minded and really supportive of small brands, but then they're actually not. And that's one thing that I find very frustrating, because there are categories like coffee, which are very stale. There is not really a lot going on there. Like, the most exciting thing that you'll find in a supermarket these days are Starbucks Nespresso capsules, and that's kind of...
It's gone backwards in that sense, hasn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of like that's the extent to which they are willing to go, But what I'm trying to do with Fresh Drip is something different, I'm trying to offer them something innovative, something that's new, something that's really cool, something that nobody else has, And I often feel that people go into tastings, for example, if I send samples, with a very sort of like specific vision of what they want. And when the product doesn't meet that, or it's different, then they're like, well, this is not for us, And I think that's a shame, because I think, you also have to have an open mind to things like this, because when Nespresso came out 20 years ago, everybody thought it was never going to catch on. And look at where it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I hope they do something about their kind of, I don't know, whatever, carbon footprint, though. I just can't see all the
they're now making bicycles out of recycled capsules.
Oh, that's good.
I really can't stand the capsule coffee thing. It seems so wasteful to me. But, and what's, traditional methods are fine as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
What I wanted to ask you is how you select your roasters and suppliers. I mean, is that a kind of organic process? Do you come across something and think, oh, I'd really like to work with them, and just go straight in?
So for the coffee vine, this is a really interesting process, because I have a really long list of people that I want to work with. There's a long list of people that want to work with me. And I'm very specific about what I want in the box. And for example, for the upcoming October box, which people can pre-order on the website, thecoffeevine.com, we are working with 3 Canadian roasters, which is really exciting because these 3 roasters have never been featured in Europe. They've never had a sale in Europe. I've only worked with 1 Canadian roaster in the past, and this is going to be a really, really exciting box because we're the first subscription service to do something like this. And there will be a second part coming next year in March with other roasters from Canada. What we try to do is really try to create something really specific, unique, something that is very much in line with what's seasonal at the moment, what's available, what's fresh. But also we try to select the coffees based very much on freshness, flavor, roasting skills. So we do blind cuppings, which is basically like a tasting where we put a bunch of different coffees on the table and people come to these cuppings and they taste the coffees and we rate them. And then afterwards, everyone says which ones were their favorites. And then we choose the coffees based on that. So it's really a blind kind of like going in without any vision or ideas. Like all these roasters famous, so they must be great, because we've had some roasters who were not known by anybody and they really came out on top. So that's very exciting.
Yeah. And in a kind of broader sense, I've come across reports saying that the future of coffee is challenging, not least because of climate change, but also the growers themselves, the next generation are not interested in staying on the farm.
Very true. Yeah.
So has that had an impact on you yet, or you're obviously aware of it?
I'm aware of it. It's not had an impact on me so far because the coffees that I work with are very, very high quality. And the people that produce those coffees generally, they can live very well from the coffee sales that they make because the roasters and the coffee importers that work with them generally pay very high prices for the coffees.
Yeah.
So in return, the roasters, the producers can invest into their local communities. Yeah. They can actually pay for living wages. I think there's a huge misconception in the market about fair trade and all these labels that people put on their coffees and teas and whatever. Because actually, in order to get certified as a producer, you need to invest a huge amount of money and you need to pay to get certified every year. And a lot of producers, even if they are organic, they can't afford it. So as a result, you have a lot of these producers who are basically being squeezed by all these different certification companies and large producers like, big sort of commercial brands. When actually, they're saying that it's fair trade, but, there's nothing left at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So what we do is a lot of the roasters that we work with are directly trading, or they're working with very renowned importers who have direct relationships with these growers. And yeah, it's very exciting because there is indeed a shortage of people who are willing to take over because most people want to live in cities and so on. But I think more and more people are starting to realize, hey, this is a really beautiful business. And yeah, let's hope that they don't run out of talent to keep the farms going.
Yeah.
So the future of coffee is precarious.
I'm wondering if I need to start stockpiling.
Yes, indeed.
Amsterdam kitchen. We've got Alex Kitain from the Coffee Vine. Woo-hoo. Yeah. So excited. There's so much to talk about with what you do. Let's look locally in Amsterdam. What's your top coffee places? That can often be depending on where you live as well. But go-to coffee places in Amsterdam.
So, I live in the Baarsjes, which is just at the end of the Kinkerstraat, basically. And there are some amazing coffee bars dotted all over town. Some of my favorites include Public Space in Noord, which is just behind the Eye Institute.
Yes.
It's a stunning coffee bar, just a design masterpiece, I think. Really one of the most beautiful coffee bars I know. So they're doing some great stuff over there. They're also one of the few places in town where you can sample some really interesting roasters. So they have also had Canadian roasters or Norwegian roasters. So that's definitely a huge recommendation. Fuku is another place in Bos en Lommer. It's run by Lex Venneker, who became... He was the runner-up in the World Barista Championships in Amsterdam last year. Woo-hoo. But he's won the Dutch Barista Championships many times. And his friend Dylan Sedgwick, who is kind of his coach and a very close friend. So they run this really, really nice coffee bar called Fuku.
How do you spell that? F-U-K-U?
Yeah.
Good one.
Another place that I really love is 4850 in Oost. It's run by a very, very amazing team that is also comprised of a sommelier. So they have an amazing wine list, and they also have really great food. So that's definitely a recommendation. Scandinavian Embassy is a classic, of course.
Yes. In De Pipe.
In De Pipe. So there's a bunch of places. I mean,
it's really changed a lot, hasn't it?
It has changed a lot.
We didn't have this much choice like 10 years ago when I first came to Amsterdam.
Really?
Yeah. I think so there was a boom about, 5 years ago when a lot of places started popping up all over town. Mm-hmm. And first, a lot of them were just cafes. Then a lot of them started roasting. And I have to say, in all honesty, that not all of them are good at doing both. So I think one of the things that I find a bit disappointing is that, a lot of people think that by starting to roast coffee, they can put so much more spin on their own brand.
They're adding value.
Exactly. But, the thing is actually a lot of the times it's much better to just work with other people's coffees, like the guys at Scandinavian Embassy or Public Space or 4850 do, because you can really focus on creating an amazing cup of coffee without having to worry about all the other things that are, involved in roasting. And there was actually a couple of places that over time had to close. I think that more people should focus on clearly defining what they want to be. I think it's simply for one or two man business. It's not feasible to be both. You have to either be a roaster or you have to be a cafe. And only once you've grown big enough that you can have a team dedicated to doing both, or you have enough money, then you can start focusing on doing both, because you will need one head roaster who is completely dedicated to doing the roasting, and you need somebody to run your cafe and make sure that the quality of every single coffee that goes out is amazing.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately one thing that I see in Amsterdam. There was like a wave when suddenly everybody started roasting, and it was like, okay, cool, guys, you need to like tone it down a little bit, because a lot of them were not doing it very well.
Yeah.
A lot of people have improved a lot, of course. Some people have not been able to succeed. But if you look at cities like, London, there's a lot of amazing coffee bars where they just work with some of the great roasters from London, and because there's so many people who do such an amazing job at roasting, you don't need to be a roaster, it's because you also need to think about, you need to sell those beans.
Yes.
And if there's such a huge market, so much competition already, then how are you going to establish yourself, So I just think there needs to be more focus, That's my sort of main
Good
point.
advice there for
But if you want to find out
entrepreneurs.
more great coffee bars, you can just visit my website.
Of course.
And there's a guide. I write guides where I summarize my best reviews for different cities. So for Amsterdam, Barcelona, I've got one for Tel Aviv, I've got one for Cape Town, and like places all over the world. So go check it out.
Yeah, brilliant. That's thecoffeevine.com.
Yes.
Easy.
I was just wondering, do you get people who... it's like a kind of game, like they try and tick off all the places that you've written about. I bet there's someone out there doing it.
Yeah, that would be great.
I hope so, because they have those people who collect all the Starbucks mugs from every city.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I was watching TV the other day. I was watching BBC, and there was this guy being interviewed who is trying to visit every Starbucks on the planet.
Yeah.
I mean,
What is so special about that? It's just so weird.
I don't really get it.
Yes.
But so if there's anybody out there who is trying to visit all the cafes that I've been trying to visit, or visited, then please let me know.
That's honourable. Yeah, I'm sure you can get some kind of special kudos thing from us.
I'll definitely give you a year-long subscription on the house.
There you go.
With a special mug with your face on it.
Yeah, you'd have to have some kind of proof, like photos.
Yes, exactly.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That would be quite a good challenge, I think.
We've been to there was a coffee place that's opened on the Overtoom. It's got this weird name. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Schurman Kens
Grasotti.
Yeah. What's the story behind that? Because we thought they've got a kind of interesting coffee serving thing, and it was quite good.
So this place is actually run by the same guys who run White Label Coffee on Jan Evertsenstraat, Francesco and Elmer. And when they started talking to me about this new location they were working on, a lot of people thought it was going to be just White Label 2 or something like this. But afterwards, when they opened, and they started posting a lot of pictures on Instagram, announcing the new name and so on. And I went in there one day and I said, what's the deal with this name? And they said, well, it's three of us. So the name is made up of the surnames of the three guys who are running it.
Oh.
And it's actually, they wanted to distance themselves a little bit from the white label concept that they have on the Jan Evertsenstraat, because at this place they also have food and they do wines. And so it's a slightly different... But I have to say, it is a bit of a tongue twister. And fair enough. Kudos to them for sticking with it. But personally, I wouldn't have chosen that name.
Schurman Kens Grasotti. I thought it meant something like Uncle Sherman knows grassotti.
Grassotti.
I don't know. And there's some kind of play on...
Yeah.
But it is a very nice place.
Yeah.
And they are also... one of the things I love about this place is that they're very much in... they're sourcing their ingredients only from the Netherlands. So even if they make something like an Indonesian dish, they will not use coconut milk. They will use something different that will replicate coconut milk, but made with a local ingredient.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's a really great thing, what they're doing. So I really love that. And you can actually try some very interesting dishes with really rare Dutch ingredients.
Yeah.
It is. It's a very interesting place, that. But what is going to be the next big thing? And if you're sitting at home listening and you've got a coffee idea, a coffee project, innovation, you know who you've got to contact.
Get on board, yeah.
And you'll recognise him when he walks through the door. Look out for Alex Kitain around Amsterdam, but also wherever you go in the world, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean... Yeah, it's interesting. It's hard to say what's going to be the next big thing. I think, continental Europe is always a bit behind the UK and North America. So in the UK, there's a couple of really cool brands that are doing like cold brew sodas, sometimes also flavored with citrus or spices. And that's, I think, something really nice.
Interesting, yeah.
You don't really see that here. Obviously, one of the big things that happened recently was the sort of emergence of Oatly.
Yes.
Now everybody is obsessed with having oat milk lattes and stuff like that. And that's cool. I do really like it as well. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen next.
What's your take on latte art?
Yeah, latte art is a tricky one because, I often judge the skill of a barista by his latte art.
Okay.
Also, obviously, because latte art is much more than just the little picture that they make. It's also about how you steam the milk, the consistency, the temperature. Because if you get somebody who froths the milk to a degree that it's literally just, sort of papery foam, then they clearly don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if you take the time to make a rosetta, as it's called, that is a sign that you're also trying to make the cup look pretty. A lot of people just make a heart, which is the easiest one. I don't expect every single cup that goes out in a cafe to have a beautiful swan or whatever, but yeah, it is an interesting one.
I think it's difficult. When I worked as a waitress, you'd get a higher hourly rate if you could pass the barista test of making the foamy stuff, and I just could not do it. I had training for ages, and I just could not get the milk. I was always burning it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
The milk frothing was the hardest part for me when I.
Yeah. Yeah, it is not easy. It is not easy.
Underrated
science
skill.
in its own
I've got
right.
great respect for latte art.
Right.
I could not do it myself. But yeah, thank you for joining us, Alex.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
So much stuff going on there. I think with the coffee subscription service, that makes a good present for people if Christmas coming up, but also the fresh drip.
Yeah.
Perfect Christmas present or something, I think. But obviously all the coffee reviews of the coffee places. Remember, thecoffeevine.com. And you're also on Instagram as well.
Yeah.
The Coffee
You
Vine.
can follow us on Instagram at The Coffee Vine or at Fresh Drip, and keep an eye out for our brand new range launching next week.
Yes. Oh, yeah, and you might well hear Alex again on Broadcast Amsterdam.
Maybe.
It's quite good
Big
friends.
shout out to my friends Maxine and Matt who run their own show here.
Yeah,
Tuesdays.
Which I've been a guest on.
Yeah, they're always
It's a great
sharing
show.
what's they're
Very
going.
a high energy show. It's really
Exactly.
Yeah, parties they've been to, parties they're going to. Cool. Well, thank you for joining us, Alex.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Amsterdam Kitchen. Join us live on Saturday mornings
From 10 till 12.
on Broadcast Amsterdam.
We'll catch up later.
It's all online.